Welcome. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of myself and the other faculty of the Foresight course, and I'm Suzanne Cachot, of course, my colleagues Chad Harms and Sam Miller. Excellent. We want to thank you all for coming tonight. And while you're clapping, how about a huge round of applause for the fantastic work that all of you have done with all your posters today. And so that we can fully appreciate the beauty of your posters, leave them here at the end of the night. We are going to collect them, the faculty, and if you want, you can pick them up from each of us individually next week or later, or we actually love to have them as examples for future classes, so don't worry about that. I've got a few thank yous. I'm going to introduce Dean, and I'm going to get out of your way here so we can get right on with the show. First off, I want to thank Tim Balco. Tim is our course coordinator, and he is the glue that holds us all together. And Tim, combined with our fantastic IT team, and the IT team and the TAs help make this event happen tonight, so I want to thank all of them. We also want to thank our corporate partners, and we had quite a few this time. We had IBM, GE, Murray Capital, Dean's Beans, McDonald's, Chrysler, Interface Carpet, and George Becker. And a huge thanks to Dean Wu, who is way in the back on one of the sides here. Yes, and without Dean Wu and her vision, woo. we wouldn't be here tonight without her vision, so thank you so much. So, Dean Cycon is the founder and CEO of Dean's Beans, organic coffee company, certified 100% organic, fair trade, and kosher coffee in Orange, Massachusetts. Dean has, and it's fabulous coffee, by the way. Dean has over 30 years development work in activism in indigenous communities, including coffee villages all over the world, Asia, Africa, Latin America. Dean is the co-founder of Coffee Kids, a nonprofit development group, and of Cooperative Coffees, the first fair trade roasters cooperative in the world. Dean has been a Woods Hole Research Fellow, a senior Fulbright Scholar, and a Yale Law School Visiting Fellow. He created Dean's Beans to prove that business can promote social change, positive economic, social, and environmental change at the third world source and be profitable at the same time. And he has 17 years of data and proof to show that this can happen. His company has grown steadily over those 17 years and has stayed on its mission. The company designs and funds people-centered development and projects in the coffee lands in partnership with the growers and returns a percentage of the profits to growers as a social equity premium. The company has received many awards, among them the Best Practices Recognition from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN, the 2004 Sustainability Award from the Specialty Coffee Association of America, and numerous other recognitions for the quality of its products and the success of its social mission. Dean's book, Java Trekker, about social justice, culture, and coffee, was awarded the gold medal as the best travel essay book of 2008 by the Independent Publishers Association, and it's been published in English, Korean, and Chinese. Dean's Beans is a tremendous example of business for good, and it is my sincere pleasure to bring Dean to campus and introduce him. So let's give Dean a warm Notre Dame welcome. Dean Cycon.
Wow. 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 Who is that guy she's talking about? Gotta make me feel like a Lone Ranger or something. I think I'll just hire Suzanne to do this talk. You did most of it, and we'll take it from there. I can go home. So, this will just take a sec, folks. What I'm gonna do is run a slideshow behind me for some of my conversation. And what this is nothing but a series of images from the world of coffee. Because as with so many commodities, as with the clothes we wear, the food we eat, it comes from people who we don't see. And as we know, if you don't see somebody, the tendency to respect them, the tendency to treat them with dignity is lessened because we don't know them. We treat our family best of all, sometimes. We treat our family best of all, our neighbors, our community, the world, in descending order of respect because we know them less. And knowledge and community tends to lead to greater respect. And what fair trade is about, ultimately, and what our business model is about, ultimately, is respect. So let me run these slides. I'm not going to comment on any of them except the ones I hear you laughing at, because I promise you will. Slideshow. Help. Slideshow. Slideshow. Slideshow? No. Slideshow. Slideshow. Slideshow from the beginning. Oh, it's like the Bible. Got it. Okay, I knew I'd get that here at Notre Dame. From the beginning, had to be there. Okay, so these are the people that grow the coffee we drink. Okay? They come from all sorts of cultures. They come from all sorts of religions. I work with Muslim, Christian, animist, and Jewish coffee farmers around the world. I work with people who wear some clothing, you'll see later. Guard your eyes for this one. I know it's a Catholic school. You'll see people who wear no clothing. It's all part of it. You'll see indigenous people from Guatemala. Largely, I work with indigenous peoples. It's my background. I came to Dean's Beans in a very circuitous path, and it's a path I want to share for just a few minutes because for you folks, I think it'll have a lot of meaning. Because I didn't wake up when I graduated college and say, I think I'll make a fortune as a coffee mogul and make the world a better place. I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew when I graduated Williams College with my political science degree, having been a theater major and gone into political science, was that I wanted to help people. I wanted to make the world a better place somehow. I had this feeling that oppressed peoples around the world needed help having their voice heard. And it moved me. It was part of my personal path of growth, I found out later on, but it's what moved me. So how is that going to spell itself out? I don't know. I didn't know. So I started going around the world and working in Japan, teaching English, and working on UN development projects in Thailand and Iran before the revolution, working with a government program of alternative energy, cow manure into methane gas in India. So I was having a blast, by the way, traveling, doing all this good work, and finding out who I was. And so in that path, I ultimately decided that what I really should do is become a lawyer, because lawyers were at the forefront of a lot of the social change movements of my early years in high school and college, especially the end of the Vietnam War. It was lawyers helping organize people in the streets and arguing in Congress that made the change and got us out of Vietnam ultimately. So I thought law is the vehicle that I can use for social justice. So I became a lawyer, and I worked with indigenous peoples. I worked on Indian reservations for a while, fighting abusive mining practices, negotiating treaty rights. I worked overseas with indigenous peoples on similar issues. And it was exciting work, but somebody finally said, until we get some jobs around here, all this environmental work is great, but if we don't get jobs, our children are going to leave the reservations and our lands will be hollowed out, and we'll have ultimately lost the battle. So if we're going to keep our cultures intact, we need more than cultural help, cultural preservation help. We need more than environmental help. We need jobs. So that's when I learned that business wasn't all bad, which is, as a product of the 60s, I'll be honest with you, that's what we learned in school. But, business had a very important role to play in the creation of a better society. Not the dominant role, that's what you learn these days. It's gone too far in the Milton Friedman direction for my taste, but an important role to play. So I started working on economic development on indigenous lands around the world, and as a lawyer at the same time. And I came to a point where I couldn't do law and do my indigenous rights work at the same time. It just wasn't working. It was foot in two different worlds. And law is so demanding, for those of you who are going to go to law school. Law is so demanding. There's an expression, law is a jealous mistress. And what that means is the longer you stay in law, the less and less you have time for outside activities. So first your civic obligations fall away, then your time with your children and family fall away, and ultimately you're a wizened old fellow in the corner office making a bundle, but very lonely. So I didn't really want to go that way. And then a very interesting thing happened to me. I was giving a lecture at the University of Rhode Island on the causes of deforestation in Brazil, part of my environmental work. Out of the audience afterwards comes a professor, and he says, Dean, I have a friend here in Rhode Island, Providence, who has a coffee shop, and he buys coffee from Brazil. He knows how poor the farmers are, but he doesn't know how he can help them, how he can return some of the benefit of his good business to the people that grow the coffee. This is 1988. There was no way to do it. So I met the guy. He said, well, you meet him and talk to him. I met the guy. We went to Guatemala together to look at a Plan International project in Guatemala. And I looked at it, and he was trying to raise money for it. And I said, Bill, this is not development. You know, giving a few chickens to some people and making the kid write a letter once a quarter to some foster parents who are giving you money, which pays for incredibly good salaries for Plan International, but provides very little on the local level, that's not development. That's maintenance. It's maintenance of the corporation, Plan International, even more than it's maintenance of the villagers. This isn't what we want to do. So he said, what can we do? I said, well, let's form our own organization and take a crack at development in an appropriate fashion. So we formed this organization called Coffee Kids, the world's first development organization to focus on coffee. My job, go into these villages around the world and try to discover their developmental priorities and try to create programs that can address them. Then I take that back to Coffee Kids, and Bill goes to the coffee industry, goes to Green Mountain, Starbucks, Caribou, and asks them for money so we can do this good work. It's charity. It's a good charity. We did really good work over a number of years. And the reason I was able to make the leap into coffee was because, as you can see from these slides, the overwhelming majority of the world's coffee farmers are indigenous peoples. This has a lot of important ramifications in social justice and economic development. Indigenous peoples tend to be what's known in the anthropological literature as periphery peoples, people who are away from the center, which means they don't have access to the mainstream economics of their country. They don't participate in the political economy of their country in a big way. The government doesn't pay much attention to them because they're way out there. In Sumatra, it takes 15 hours to drive from Medan, the northern city in Sumatra, to the coffee villages. 15 hours just to get to the farms. How far could you drive from here in 15 hours, right? You'd pass a lot of farms. Well, that's the way it is in a large part of the coffee world. So the farmers are very marginalized from the politics and the economy of their society at large. Also, as indigenous peoples, they don't tend to speak the majority language. So it's a rare place I work in Latin America where the farmers speak Spanish. What do? They speak Cachiquel, Mam, Tsutsuil, Quiché, any of 30 or 40 indigenous languages, but they don't speak Spanish. In Africa, in Ethiopia, the farmers I work with don't speak English, and they don't speak Amharic, the national language of Ethiopia. They speak Oromitha, the tribal language of the Oromo people of southern Ethiopia, and on and on and on. So it was easy for me to make the leap because I'm still working with indigenous people, and I'm still working on social justice to free people from the things that entrap them into poverty and injustice. So Coffee Kids felt like a good vehicle for me. So, doing this for a while, after about 6 years, I thought, something's wrong, something's bothering me. What's going on here? Okay, these companies, like Green Mountain, is giving us $5,000 to build a little well in a village in Guatemala, and it comes up here later on. I'll explain the Osama bin Laden t-shirt later. It's an interesting cross-cultural story. So they give us $5,000 to build this little well. So a number of families get fresh water. That's a good thing. But Green Mountain takes the photos and tells the world that it's doing all these wonderful things in these coffee villages, when in fact, all it did was give us 5,000 lousy bucks when they're buying from all over the world, and this is the only thing they're doing at the time. That's not a lot. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? These companies are making more marketing hay out of their $5,000 contribution than they are making a difference in people's lives. Is this really development? Is this really making change in people's lives? No. Over 6 years, I didn't see a lot of change, just a couple of nice programs. That's my adopted daughter in Ethiopia. I have adopted children all over the world, and that's when she heard that she was going to go to college rather than be sold as a sex slave by her father to Saudi Arabia, which was the plan. They have 15 kids, and she was one of the younger daughters. So we said, look, we're using her photo, which you'll see later on when she was a kid, in traditional gear holding a tray of coffee cups. You'll see that photo. We're still using her photo, and so in compensation for using her photo, we'll pay for her to go to college. So old man, he cried, he was very happy. He felt he had no choice but to sell his daughter into domestic servitude in Saudi Arabia, which meant sex slavery. So one way a business can show up is by saving one life, right? If we never did more than that, that's pretty damn good. So I was starting to get troubled by what we were doing at Coffee Kids. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't really where I wanted to be. So I thought, what would it look like if a company actually paid real money to these farmers for the coffee? Would it make a significant difference in the quality of life in these villages? Because under the Coffee Kids model, the businesses weren't changing the way they were doing business. They were just giving us a donation. They were taking enormous amounts of money out of those villages in terms of paying little for the coffee, but selling it very high, and then returning a little bit of it. So I call that a south to north redistribution of wealth, because all the money was flowing north, but they were giving this little bit back in charity. So what would it look like if the company actually paid real money to the coffee farmers? Could the coffee farmers make their own developmental decisions? Could they build their own roads, build their own wells? What would that look like? And then what would it look like if instead of just accepting that I'm buying these beans from these poor people at a price that they're asking and having no further responsibility, I, in true partnership with the people I'm working with, take a sense of responsibility for what's going on in their lives as well? What if the business says, we're working in this community, therefore, we're taking a sense of responsibility for the issues that hold you back in development in your community? Could you do that? Could you do that, pay the money, get involved in development, and still be profitable? If a company could do all those things and still be profitable, that's a hell of a model. And that's what I wanted to do. So in 1993, I started Dean's Beans. I left the law. I stopped teaching. Stopped teaching. And I started doing Dean's Beans full time. And it was an experiment. I wanted to see if it was possible. I really didn't know where it would go, but I wanted to see if social justice, if business could be a vehicle for serious social change and still be profitable. That was 18 years ago. The information I gave you is a year out of date, sorry. It was 18 years ago. And I can tell you the story at the end, to jump to the end for a minute, is that we are a very profitable company. I'll give you the metrics to anybody who's interested. We do incredible work around the world in not one, but in every village that we buy from. It's our business model, and I'm going to explain that next. We pay the highest prices for coffee consistently across the board in the 14 countries we work in, and we're highly profitable. What's wrong with this picture, right? Plus, on a personal level, because this is very important, I mean, you really need to be satisfied with what you do in life. It's not even good enough to say, I want to change the world, and you work for a great organization, but you're sitting in a cubicle, and you go, gee, this isn't really what I wanted to do, but at least I'm helping people. Look, I think there are three important goals in life. One of them is to do something that you are really passionate about. The other is to be in a place that you really want to be geographically. And the third is to surround yourself with people that you care about and who respect you as well. Most of us in life grab one of those things. We have meaningful work, we live in a comfortable home, or we're surrounded by family and friends. A lot of people get two of them, okay? Go for all three. There's no reason to settle. One of the problems I think with business schools is that there's a culture in business schools, and it gives you the metrics of your life. This is how business operates. This is how you are going to operate in a business. And I'm here to tell you that although a lot of the things you learn in business school are very, very good and interesting and helpful, a lot of it you can just toss out the window. I just saved you a year of tuition. Look at that. What I'm talking about is there are things you learn in business school which actually don't really necessarily matter in the business world, such as you learn to buy low and sell high, right? That's what it's all about. Well, I was a puking pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean 3. In the last scene of the movie, I throw up behind Johnny Depp. That's my claim to fame in the movies. I'm telling you that. I put that in there just to show you that social justice work doesn't always have to be like about poverty and sadness. You can have some fun while you're doing it too. So buy low, sell high. That's what you learn in business school. Well, for us, We think that it's just the opposite. We buy high and sell low. Why do we do that? We buy as high as we can because we want the farmers to receive the maximum economic benefit from our transaction. On the other hand, we sell as low as we can so that the consumers can participate in socially just trade without having to pay 17 bucks for it. Because when you're buying coffee or anything, I was looking at Tom's shoes. There's a great model. You know, if you buy anything these days that claims to have a social good and you have to pay extra for it, is that company really doing anything other than collecting your environmental tax, your development tax that you're willing to pay and acting as a vehicle to send it on? Are they really participating in social change, or are they just acting as an agent for you to make a contribution? Sorry. I was looking at a t-shirt company. I had dinner with a t-shirt company guy in Providence last week, Happy Tees. And he's got this great program. Buy one t-shirt and we will give a t-shirt to a poor child in the developing world. And I said, all right, sounds kind of interesting. Let's take a look. So you can buy the t-shirt for 20 bucks. That's a lot for a t-shirt. So he's making money there. And then he gives a t-shirt to someone in the developing world, and that t-shirt costs him $1.50. So I said to the guy, all this is really nice, but I mean, you're not really making change. You're just reallocating some of the cost of a very expensive item into giving away something on this end. But you're not changing anything. Very interesting dynamics, and that's the subject of an entire talk, which I won't get into, right? But there are ways of looking at all this social enterprise and social good stuff. There are different ways of analyzing it. But the point was that what you learn in business school isn't necessarily the metric that you need for a successful business. Another quick metric. As you all know, what's the highest and best good of a corporate officer or a corporate director is to maximize shareholder profit, right? You all learned that? Well, that's absolutely incorrect, and it's even borderline illegal. Because the real obligation of a corporate executive is to maximize shareholder value. In fact, it's not even to maximize shareholder value. The legal standard is to preserve shareholder value. That's the legal requirement for a director or an officer of a company. Very, very different. Profit, value. A company defines its own values. You can go out there and say, we're going to define our set of values as environmental good and then profit. Or we're like Dean's Beans, we're going to have a triple bottom line. Of course we value profit, that's important. We have to keep going as a company. We also value the stability and integrity of the communities we work with. So we always want to have that in balance, plus our environmental program. So we want to have that in balance. So anybody who invests in Dean's Beans knows that those are the values they're investing in. So it's really values, not profit, a very important distinction. Okay? So getting back to the Dean's Beans story. So I decided to give this thing a try. So how does it actually manifest in a business? What does it look like to take these kind of values and these kind of desires and stick it in a business? How do we actually do it? Well, at Dean's Beans, we've got three programs, three focus programs. The environmental, the economic, and the societal. And I'll explain each of them briefly. The environmental is that we recognize that in the world of coffee, coffee is the second most heavily pesticided crop in the world only after cotton. The top 10 pesticides, chemical herbicides used on coffee are all either banned for use in the United States or in the highest category of restricted use. We are not allowed to use most of these chemicals, and I'm talking about DDT, parathion, malathion. We're not even allowed to use these chemicals on crops in the United States. Yet, we're allowed to manufacture them and export them so that those coffee farmers, those poor people over there, can use them on their coffee without masks, training, respirators, any of that stuff. So, well, okay, so people buy pesticides and use them. How they use them, that's their responsibility. Right, except let's go back to one thing. The majority of the world's coffee farmers are indigenous peoples. What does that mean? Among other things, they don't speak the majority language. Most of the farmers I work with are illiterate. They don't read, period, let alone English. The warnings on the back of the chemical bags, on the DDT bag particularly, are in English, Dutch, and Spanish. None of those languages are read by the majority of the farmers I work with in the world. So they can't use those pesticides safely without training, no training available. So I can't tell you how many countries I've been in where I see little kids walking through their parents' coffee field with a bucket of DDT, just picking it out in their hand and throwing it there. So it's important for us to help farmers get past that. Chemicals in agriculture have only been around for about 70 years. They weren't, God didn't drop them on the mount with the tablet. He didn't throw a bag of DDT down. That stuff's only been in agriculture for a couple generations. It's new. It doesn't have to be that way. Plenty of good food was grown before the chemicalization of agriculture, which is as much about banks and big business as it is about farms. So we work with farmers to get off chemicals and to get into a certified program for organics, which is not, oh, they don't use chemicals like so many people say, but it's a 3-year, very strict program, like an MBA here, where for 3 years farmers learn about water, soil, and waste management, conservation and waste management. And after 3 years, the soil is tested all that time. And if after 3 years they pass the soil tests and they pass tests on how to use all this stuff, bam, they can get certified organic, and then they're inspected every year. This is serious stuff. It's a big commitment for farmers. They're rewarded in the marketplace by at least a 20-cent premium per pound on the coffee, which can represent anywhere from 10 to 15% extra price. Okay, so there is an incentive for farmers to use organics, plus the obvious health benefits, which they certainly understand over time. So that's the basis of our organic program. The second part of our program is the economic leg. So one of the tools we use is fair trade, which right now is going through a lot of turmoil because the certifying agency for the United States, Transfair, now called Fair Trade USA, just left the international umbrella organization that regulates fair trade around the world and is going out on their own. And while they're going out on their own, they're going to lower the standards so that instead of something having to be 100% fair trade, which is what we do, now it can only be 25% fair trade and still have that label on it. Which means, other people than me have shown, is that a Hershey bar can come out with a fair trade label on it and it doesn't have any fair trade cocoa in it, because sugar is the heaviest element in a chocolate bar. So they can do fair trade sugar, which is a hell of a lot less expensive than fair trade cocoa, and they can have a certified fair trade bar. So that means that cocoa, and you saw the poster session, that cocoa can come from slave labor, it can come from child labor, it can be conflict cocoa, which means it's stolen, sold, and used to fuel wars in Africa. A whole host of things can go. It can be heavily pesticided. Doesn't matter. All that can go in, and it's still a fair trade certified product. So that's a real issue. That's happening right now, and I can't give you the answer of how that's going to turn out. But fair trade is what I call one of the tools in our toolbox of economics. The best part of fair trade on the farmer's end is that it requires small farmers, again, very disenfranchised, very distant farmers, who own probably 2 acres at most, maybe 5 acres, that's the maximum. Farmers who own small farms who can't produce a lot individually, it gets them to organize into democratic cooperatives, and those cooperatives then collectively can process, access credit, get information, and they can access the world market directly, which means what? They don't have to go through those layers of middlemen, and instead of the farmer getting 10 cents a pound, after all the costs have been taken away, those farmers are now receiving $1 or now $2, in some cases $3 a pound. A radically different economics for local villages. One example, in Peru, I found a small co-op and I started working with them. They only produced 3 containers the first year I worked with them. 1 container they sold to Interamerican, which is an organization, a broker in New York, for 86 cents a pound. The second container they sold to a local exporter for 55 cents a pound. Then the third container they sold to us as a fair trade organic certified, and it was $1.65 a pound. So you can see how radically different the economics are. Well, that was in 2004. This year, that co-op sold 30 containers of coffee, 100% of them at organic fair trade pricing, because we brought them in to the fair trade marketplace and introduced them to other people and started helping them sell. We helped them with marketing as part of our development work, got them going, and now they're a real poster child for the impact of fair trade on local villages. So that's the fair trade piece on the farmer's side. And the cooperatives also have a lot of other benefits. Because they're democratic, they often, for the first time ever, empower the farmers to participate in the economics and the politics of their local village or their regional. So all of a sudden, people are voting. All of a sudden, women are participating in decision-making for the first time in their lives on a public sphere. And some of the women I work with, you saw, not her, some of the women I work with, you saw, like, there's a picture of me and Hillary Clinton, and the other person standing next to me is Esperanza Castillo from Peru. And she has become a major international figure in social justice and trade. And when I met her, she was a very meek Christian woman holding a little bag of coffee saying, "Please look at our coffee, sir." And now, not even 10 years later, she's a major international player on the world stage. I've been with her at United Nations functions where she speaks. Amazing. So the personal power of transformation that fair trade has brought to people is every bit as important as the economic possibilities. But it's a story that people don't know because they concentrate on the economics because that's what the literature talks about. But that's not the real story of fair trade. Okay? On our side, we're required by fair trade to pay a minimum price when the world coffee price goes down below $1.60. We stop there. So even if the price goes to 50 cents a pound, which it has in the early part of this century, and the farmers are getting paid less than it costs them to produce the coffee, we're required never to pay less than $1.60 because that's what we've agreed internationally is the minimum price that farmers need to stay on their land, to put some food on the table, put their kids in school, hopefully, and have a little something left over to advance their lives. But it's not enough. And that's only the minimum. When the world market price goes up above $1.60, today it's $2.35, I think. That means $2.35 a pound, $2.35 a pound. Fair traders are required to pay 20 cents at least more than that world fair trade, that world price, okay? All that's groovy, except we don't see it that way. We see that as just a minimum that's a good indicator of what farmers need. We have direct relationships with all the farmers we work with, and we negotiate real prices. So, what did we pay this week? This week we just bought some Sumatran. What did we pay? $4.25 a pound. That's a radical difference from the $2.35 of the world market price, right? What did we pay for Colombian? $3.75 a pound. We bought some more Peruvian at $3.40 a pound. Ethiopian's about $4 a pound too. So right now the world prices for our negotiated coffee are dramatically high. So we're paying the buy-high prices. At the other end, if you go into a store that sells Dean's Beans, they're selling it for about $9.69 a pound. Compare that to Starbucks' $14 a pound for non-fair trade coffee. So somebody's making a lot of money in coffee, and it generally isn't the farmers, okay? And the question is, from a justice point of view, how badly do you need that profit that those companies make? Starbucks, Green Mountain. In the worst part of the world coffee crisis in the year 2000, when coffee farmers were being thrown off their land by the millions, it was the years of the highest corporate profits for those two companies. Not because they were making a better product or doing anything, but because their cost of goods had dropped 60%, and they were just simply pocketing the money. They never lowered their price in the store. Is that ethical? No. Is it legal? Yeah, sure. Is it good business tactic and that you learn in business school? Depends on the business school, but yes. In some cases, yes. But the question is profit really your highest good, even as a corporation? It's a good, and it's really important, but is it the highest good? Does it outweigh all these other things? Don't know. That's a question for you to answer for yourselves. In my model, it doesn't. So that's the economic side. We also have a profit-sharing program. We have profit-sharing with all Dean's Beans employees, so we have a profit-sharing program with the farmers. So we pay the farmers 6 cents a pound as a profit share for every pound of their coffee that we sell. At the end of the year, we send them a check, or I deliver it. You see a lot of photos of me handing over the cash, and that's just handing over the profit share. It may be $2,000, it may be $5,000, and those communities vote on what they're going to do with it. Sometimes they distribute it. Sometimes they use it to create loan funds. In this one Pangoa cooperative in Peru, the first woman who took a loan from that fund sent her son to college. He was the first kid from that co-op ever to go to college. Now he just finished law school, and what is he doing? He's a business lawyer working for the co-op. He came back to his village so he could help his people. Powerful stuff. So that's the economic side. And now I'm going to very briefly take you through the third leg, which is my favorite passionate leg in this whole thing, and that is the development side. And this is something that we're the only people who do out there in the universe. As I said, we don't give money to charity, although we do do a lot of charitable works, but that's not our primary goal. Full screen, where is it? Help. I know you can do it. I have faith in you. Okay, and I'll take it from there. Okay, so the way we do development work in the coffee villages is very unique. We don't just give money to CARE or Save the Children, they do the work, we take the credit. We work directly with the farmers and the farming communities in every one of the 14 countries we work in. It's a lot of work, it's intense work, but it's the best work in the world for me. So what do? As I say, we work directly with the countries. We don't use intermediary NGOs or government organizations. We work directly. And what do? We go into these communities and we listen. Wow, what a concept, right? We go into these communities and we sit and we listen and we learn and we hear from people. What are the obstacles to development in your community? What are your goals here? It's not as simple as saying, what do you need, okay? I'll give you an example. I was recently in Guatemala, and I was in a cooperative, and there were these two women reporters who wanted to see how we do this work, and we were sitting with the women's cooperative at the co-op, the women's group, and we're sitting there, and the reporters are hammering the women. So, do your husbands beat you? How are women treated here? You know, like, damn, asking these questions. And these 10 indigenous women just sat there like bumps on a log. They're not saying anything. So everybody's getting a little frustrated. So I said, can I ask a question? I asked the women, can I ask a question? And they said, yeah, you can ask a question. And actually, this is the first time I had visited this co-op too. So they didn't really know me. So I said, okay, answer me this. How would you like to see your children's lives different from your lives? And those women started talking and didn't stop for an hour. It all started to come out about their lack of education, and they really want their children to have education, and you know, there's no schooling here, the roads suck, but you know, what are we going to do for jobs? Our kids are going to grow coffee, but that's never enough. Their kids will grow coffee. Our daughters are getting pregnant at 16 because there's nothing else to do, and we can't put them in school. All this stuff starts coming up. So from that, we start engaging in a dialogue about, okay, well, how can we turn that into something that would address one of these programs? Now, this is not an overnight thing. This can take a year of visits back and forth and studying when we're not there. But ultimately, we come up with a program. We decide what we're going to work on, whether it's alternative income, health, education, environment, whatever. We're going to work on that. Then we together design a program. And this is one of the unique things about what we do. We don't come in with a cookie cutter form that says, hi, I'm from Stanford. This is an inside joke in the development world. I'm from Stanford University and I know what you need. Here's our template for development. Clonk, put it on top of your head, wear it. We don't do that. We say, okay, what are you capable of handling here? How can you manage this program? What resources and training do you need for you to manage this program? Because who knows your community best? You do. The value of that is not only, we don't need a big infrastructure at Dean's Beans to do this, but much more importantly, that you start to create in the communities an embedded sense of ownership of the program. So it's not, oh, it's that charity that came in and is doing this thing with all these foreigners and then they're going to leave and then it goes back to what it was. That's typical development stuff. No, this is the community runs it, the community controls it. They have a vested interest in its success because it's their project. Plus, people are getting trained and people are getting responsibility. And it may be that the most important thing about our development work is less about the outcomes than it is about the training and development work, the personal development work that the people involved do. Because when we leave a community, I mean, we don't leave the community, but when we stop doing the program because they manage it themselves, what's happened is now we have a whole bunch of people in that cooperative who for the first time in their life are saying, you know what, I'm not a victim. I'm not a passive recipient here of others' charity. I'm a positive, proactive actor in my life, and I can make change in my life. And that is probably the most powerful message that anyone can get, is that they have the capacity to change their own life with a little help from their friends. So we facilitate program design, and where's the funding come from? Do we go to Catholic charities? No. Do we go to the USAID? No. The funding comes from Dean's Beans cash flow, from Dean's Beans profit, and every now and then from Dean's home equity line, because sometimes we need that little boost. So I got to bring in 10 grand so we can do this project. Dean's Beans pays me back with interest. So I want to give you just 2 or 3 quick examples of what this actually looks like, so you'll see how profound it can be and how a business can make significant change in people's lives directly. In Guatemala, we started working with these 44 indigenous women who wanted to get healthcare training, because in these villages there's no doctors, there's no nurses, there's no healthcare clinics for miles and miles and miles. So there's a lot of infant mortality, there's maternal problems. Anybody who gets a broken leg, that's an issue. There's just no healthcare. So they wanted healthcare training. So they said, well, give us a grant for healthcare training. And I said, no, we don't do grants really, but we will help you develop something. How can we make a program that actually funds itself? How can we turn women's healthcare in indigenous rural Guatemala into a local social enterprise? Not a foreign social enterprise given money, but a local social enterprise. So what we did was we took microfinance, I know you know all that, what that is, and we took women's health, and we had a marriage ceremony, so that every woman who received healthcare training also received a loan. The women were the bankers, right? You know how that works, the banking circle. So every woman who received healthcare training receives a loan. And usually in microfinance, what happens? Every month or every 2 months, the woman pays back a part of the principal, pays money into a savings component for herself, her own savings component, and the third component is paying interest on the loan. Now, here's the dirty little secret about microfinance around the world that you should learn right now. Major industries have grown up, and that's why farmers are committing suicide left and right in India. Major industries have grown up to service microloans, and they're not all in it to help the farmers or the communities. They're in it because it can be a profitable industry. That's why the one in Mexico went public. They're getting 26% return. Whoa! What about the farmers? So the problem is a lot of that money is getting sucked out of the village by interest. So yeah, the women have money for loans, but they're paying it back without exorbitant interest rates. So it's certainly better than not having the money, but is it really the best way to do this? So we did it differently. We said every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, depending on the business the woman has, you pay back a part of the principal, you pay into your own savings component, and then we take that interest, which they decide the interest level, they usually decide around 10% annually, they take that interest and we put it in a fund. And the fund builds up over time. It's not going to another organization, it's staying right in the village. Then, when it gets built up high enough, what do? We start paying the healthcare costs with it. And what happened is, after 4 years, the fund got big enough and started generating enough interest that it paid for 100% of the healthcare training and the supplies. So we created, in the course of 4 years, with 44 indigenous, illiterate women in Guatemala, the world's first self-funding women's healthcare program. Not bad, okay? Not bad. So you can go in and do all the beautiful healthcare work in the world, but when you leave, what happens? These women carried this on for 8 years. The only reason it fell was after about 7 years, they said, you know, this is such a good thing, we should spread it to other villages. And they took it and they tried to duplicate it, replicate it elsewhere, and the women in the further outlying areas who weren't part of the same ethnic group said, well, we don't have to pay that money back. And so it started to collapse in on itself. I still work with these women, and my daughter now works with their daughters, who are now all in school, thanks to the Chica program that she created, where the mothers and the girls work together to raise money to keep the girls in school. Powerful, powerful stuff. There are so many, but I just want to nail some good ones. Miriam's Well, the world's first revolving loan fund for wells. What did we do? Every cooperative we work with in Ethiopia, it's a secondary co-op is the management co-op, primary co-op are the producers. So we work with the secondary co-op. We gave them a grant of $10,000, and we asked that each primary co-op that wants clean water in their village forms a water committee and investigates what's the best way to build a well in the village by themselves, even if they have to hire outside well drillers. But they're going to run and manage the well. So we set it up. So with that grant, what happens? The $10,000 gets loaned to the first co-op. They build their well. Then they pay back the fund a penny a pound at harvest and sales time without interest. They pay back the fund until it's replenished. It takes a season or two. When the fund is replenished, it rotates to the next co-op who borrows it, builds their well, repays, et cetera, et cetera. We call it Miriam's Well. This is a bit of good marketing because, well, you guys ought to know, this is a Catholic school. In the Old Testament, the biblical prophetess Miriam could find water in the desert anywhere she went. By simply putting a stick down, she found water. So what better marketing tool for a water project than Miriam's Well, because now everywhere these co-op people go, they can find water for themselves. So it was a great marketing device for the project. And at this point, well over 3,000 people have gotten clean water for the first time in history in their villages. What does that mean? Clean water, it's great, right? Clean water. You can buy a Fiji bottle for $10 and get clean water. What's the big deal? Well, what it means is, in real terms, is that childhood intestinal and internal issues disappeared within 6 months in the villages we're working in. That means that the kids can go to school because they're not sick. That means they can actually study homework over their kerosene lanterns at night because they're not sick. So the child's productivity in school is greatly increased. The women say that they have saved an hour and a half to 2 hours of physical labor every day because now they don't have to walk 1.5 kilometers down the hill to get water from a 90-foot well and then carry back 40 pounds of water on their back, which is 5 gallons. It's 8 gallons a pound for water. So they're carrying 40 gallons of water on their back a mile up a hill, right? Or half a mile up a hill, twice a day. Now they don't have to do that anymore because the well is in the village. So there's a profound impact on children's ability to learn, on women's health and women's capacity to work in the field and in their own home. And interestingly, in the Muslim communities we're working in, they say they can pray. They can pray more effectively because without clean water, they didn't feel like their prayers were pure. So it's amazing how far this stuff can go in ways we never think about it. I'll only talk about one more, just because of time. Okay, I told you in Rwanda there was an interest in men, oh maybe I didn't, men overcoming gender violence. The folks in Rwanda, because we were there right after the genocide, they said, look, the biggest issue for us is how do we overcome violence? We got some serious violence issues in our community, and a lot of it is gender violence. How do we overcome it? So we got together with a couple of very interesting local groups and international groups that were doing work on gender violence prevention, and we co-created a training program. We brought together 30 people, 15 men, 15 women, coffee farmers, for the first training for a week. And we had the most amazing personal training about identifying gender violence in our lives, acknowledging it, and asking for forgiveness. At the end of the week, we had a major public ceremony. I'm sorry I don't have a picture of it. Well, I do, in a field with hundreds and hundreds of villagers around who were dying to hear what this thing was all about. And the men came out one by one to the women and apologized for the gender violence they'd perpetrated. And the women accepted the apology, and then everybody danced. People around were screaming and yelling support. Oh, it was so beautiful. Now what happened is those 15 and 15 have started going to other co-ops, and they're doing the trainings on their own. So we're no longer involved in it. We don't have to fund it. They're doing their own training work, and it's spreading all over rural Rwanda through the coffee co-ops. Powerful, powerful work. So these are just a few examples. I mean, like your poster session, it just shows you that there's infinite ways that you can show up, infinite innovative and creative ways that you can address social problems through businesses. And so I want to leave plenty of time. I could talk for hours about this stuff, but I want to leave plenty more time. But I just want to share with you that you don't have to, if you're feeling this way about business, you don't have to either spend your life just making money and maybe giving some to charity, or having a boring life, or having a life that's more narrowly circumscribed. You can create whatever. Business is nothing more than a tool that allows you to sculpt on the canvas of your life anything you want. It's a good tool. It doesn't have to be a negative tool. So I urge you to take this stuff seriously, learn as much as you can in school, in business school, because you do learn great skills. Don't neglect those anthropology courses or or other courses where you start to learn more about community dynamics. Because if you're going to do any work internationally, you're going to fall on your face if you don't understand the communities you work in and wonder why. You'll blame it on them. Trust me, that's what you can read it in the newspapers all the time. It's always them. No, it isn't. It's how we interact with them. So I did come here to say that business can be a positive force for social change in the world and still be profitable at the same time. And I think, in fact, that unless all businesses change their fundamental operating principles, we're in for a lot of trouble. We're not going to address any of the major social issues and environmental issues that are out there today, and we'll leap from financial crisis to financial crisis. We really need to totally take a hard look at the fundamentals of business and reorient them on a way that respects people, profit, and planet at the same time. So with that, I'm going to thank you very much. I want to hear some loving. Thank you. Thank you, Notre Dame. Go Rudy. And I think we have time for a couple of questions. Okay, I know it's like beer drinking night and all that stuff, but if anybody's got some questions, lay them on me. Who dare? Who dares? Oh, come on, guys. These can't be all the answers. Metrics, you want to know how much money we make? You know, what do you want to know where I get my clothes? Name it. Sir. Oh, this is like Oprah. You have to come out and speak on the microphone.
Hi, my name's Julian. So it's like really great, all the things you do abroad and stuff, but what are you doing to create jobs in the U.S. and help education in the U.S.?
That's a really interesting question, you know? Nothing personal, but isn't it amazing? You get done saying, I'm spending my life doing this, and someone goes, well, why aren't you doing that? No offense, but that's the wrong question to ask. I'm sorry, it's just the wrong question to ask. Having said that, I'll take you up on your challenge, okay? So, we apply everything you see here to work at home. I'm just talking about our work in the world because it's the thing that excites me the most, okay? What are we doing here? All right. Dean's Beans has the highest salary and wages in our area. One. Everybody at Dean's Beans has 100% health care, no copay, no premiums, no deductions, no nothing. 100%. We're the only company in Massachusetts and probably in the United States that does that. Dean's Beans, by law, is required, because of our 401k plan, to donate to contribute up to 3% of our employees' salaries to our 401k. That's what a 401k is. It's a miserable exception from the pensions that your parents had, but that's what the law requires. It lets us get away with that. Well, we contribute 15% of people's salaries annually. So basically, we're giving people a month and a half of their salary in their 401k plan. It's the most generous 401k plan in the state of Massachusetts, which is a lot more generous than Alabama and other places, okay? So we're doing that. What do we do in the communities? We have a program with Somali refugee women in Springfield, Massachusetts. They can't get jobs. So what did we do? We created a program. We brought in 4 industrial sewing machines. We brought in a trainer and a designer. We donate the burlap sacks that our coffee comes in to the Somali refugee women, and they make reusable grocery bags out of them with cool logos from the coffee cooperatives. And we have an output contract. Anybody know what that is, or is that an MBA thing? An output contract is where you agree to buy everything that people make. Okay? So we have an output contract with the Somali refugee women. Every bag they make, we will buy. If we can't sell it, bummer. So that gives us an incentive to really sell them. We sell them for $15 a bag. What do we pay the women? $15 a bag. We're a pure pass-through. We don't make any money on it. So that's one of the things we're doing. We just started a new program 2 weeks ago with Tapestry Women's Health in Western Massachusetts. Because of federal and state budget cuts to women's health, Tapestry and other nonprofit organizations that provide information and health services to women are really struggling. So we came up with this innovative way to work together. We created a Tapestry roast, and we're getting a lot of our customers to use it, and we're sending money back from the sale of each pound of Tapestry roast to Tapestry. We're also buying the coffee from a women's growers cooperative, and Tapestry is helping them set up a women's health program. So all 3 of us are involved in this very innovative relationship. So those are some of the things we're doing, and we've been doing stuff like that since the beginning. We started the first roaster owned and operated by a homeless community. We created it as a cooperative so that homeless people could come and go and be compensated by the amount of time that they could actually spend given their lifestyle and their physical needs. So we address local issues as well. However, I really got to tell you, I object strongly to anybody who takes a look at something good someone's doing and says, oh, that's nice, but what about this problem? What's that all about, you know? There's a million problems in the world, and you've got to find something that you feel like making a stand on. To quote somebody, you can't solve all the world's problems, but you can do something about something. So frankly, you know, get out there and do something about something, and never let someone putting you down because you didn't do enough stop you. It's all good. The Indonesians have an expression which actually Tolstoy said it, but I always attribute it to the Indonesians because it sounds better. The expression is add your light to the sum of lights. You know, we're not the sun, but if each of us adds our light to the sum of lights, what do you get? A supernova, right? We all have a part to play. We can all be a light. You don't have to be a supernova, but being a light collectively helps. That's what I found when I started working with little nonprofits around the world. There are hundreds of thousands of little nonprofits around the world. 3 people here, 4 people here, and each one of them is adding something good. And if it wasn't for all that goodness, this world would be an incredibly dark place. So it really doesn't matter the metrics of how much you do or what you do, but it's, as Rabbi Akiva said, it's the fact that you do it. That's the most important thing. Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Casey Murdoch. I just had a quick question about if you face any if you describe the challenges you face in sustaining your developments. For instance, you just talked about your women's healthcare clinic, how it fell apart after a few years. I was wondering if you kind of generalize the challenges you face in trying to not only implementing those developments, but also sustaining them going forward.
You know, that's a great question, and it's a question that people in the development world are constantly asking. There's 2 things going on. The first is, when do you let go? When you're engaged in the development of a project, how long do you stay involved in the management of it, and when do you let go? Because the ultimate goal of development is not to recolonize, right? We don't want to run their program forever. It's to help people be able to run their own projects. So when do you let go? You think you know. I mean, we let go, and the women ran for 8 years. It was wonderful. But then they made that decision to move on, and maybe if we were in closer touch with them about that decision, we could have talked to them about strategies to do it, skill base needed, you know, what happens. Heck, it's like an American business when you expand too fast. You know, no different. What could we have brought in there? And I still work with the women. They're not unhappy that it happened. It didn't disappear. It just shrunk back to the original 4 villages that the women are in. So that's one thing, is when do you let go? The other thing is development. Boy, we're working on this right now. We're always working so hard. How can you improve development, you know? What kind of reporting mechanisms do you need from people so that you really know what's going on? How do you ensure accountability? You know, all those questions, there's tons of them in there. And people have written books on this stuff. And I've got to say that I think if I had one, people asked me earlier today, you know, what would I have done differently, or what regret do I have? And I think if I have one regret, it's that I didn't get even more education on sort of the new ways of understanding and analyzing international development projects, because there's a lot of really good new stuff coming out about transparency, accountability, metrics, what are you looking for? I wish I knew more. So, like any good capitalist, I'll hire the talent. So I just hired a guy to work with me, a young guy, just basically your age, who's now working with me to do just that, to create a much more formalized program of development instead of, you know, Dean's helter-skelter from the heart approach, which has been great. But, you know, Dean's getting a little older, and I've got to go on. I got to work with fisheries. I have novels to write. I got lots of other things I want to do with my life. So how do we institutionalize this creativity in a way that allows it to carry on meaningfully for the farmers, and also how do we work with the farmers in a way that helps them not implode? It's kind of all up in the air, so it's a really great question, but we're working on it. Anybody else? Ma'am?
Where is your coffee sold, and how do you go about that distribution process? Do you think if you sold on a large scale, let's say you were selling in Kroger's and Walmart's and Target, do you think that you can sustain this model?
Yeah. We don't want to grow I probably shouldn't tell you this, but we don't have a sales or marketing team. I know, we've already talked about this, the marketing piece. We don't do sales and marketing, okay? We've decided that the money, time, and energy put towards sales and marketing, I would rather put that money towards development work and then tell people about the development work we do. So our marketing program is basically, the New York Times calls us up and interviews us about a few things. Inc. magazine did a great article on us. Link TV, which is a very progressive station in San Francisco, did a marvelous thing. Some of you have seen it called The Business of Change, a little 3-minute, 4-minute video about us. They're releasing a few more this month. I talk at business schools, I talk at universities, I talk at the United Nations twice a year, I speak internationally. So the name Dean's Beans gets around, but not through paid marketing programs. The question of growth. Yes, this is the Stanford thing again. The bigger you are, the more impact you can have. I think that's actually a fair equation. I don't deny that, potentially. But we're not in it to be Starbucks. We're in it to model that a business can be a vehicle for social change and have an impact. I want to be the virus that infects all the other companies out there so that they incorporate into what they do things like we do, not even the same things, but that this concept of how to work a business, a true social enterprise for social good, can be replicated within other organizations. That's our model. It's a viral model, very modern for social media, right? It's a viral model. I want other people to do it. I don't want Dean to do it. It's not about Dean's Beans. We have, in a funny word for a business school, we have enough, okay? We really have enough. We're big enough. We work hard enough. We have a beautiful corporate culture inside where everybody's happy and we got little elves and I mean everybody, we're just such a happy place at Dean's Beans. Actually, the employees at Dean's Beans don't even want more employees around. Why? Because we have a kick-ass profit share. And the more people that are there, the more they got to share the profit. So they say, you know, let's keep it at the size it is. So I really enjoy the role of helping other people start companies that incorporate these social values in it. And that's more what I see my role is. On the distribution thing, we don't use distributors. That saves us another 25%. That helps. Bottom line, goes right to the bottom line. We distribute directly. So we're in 60 Whole Foods. We're in cafes all over the country. We sell about $2 million a year on the internet, $7, $8 a pound, where you can also go on our website and design your own coffee, the only place in the known universe where you can design your own coffee and then make your own label. It can be Dan's graduation blend. Well, that's probably a little optimistic. But it can be, you know, anything you want. Happy birthday, Mom. You send it to your mom, whatever. That's a feature we have, an innovative feature we have on our site that brings in a lot of traffic. So, you know, the internet was meant for me as an educational vehicle to consumers, and within the last 8 years, it's become half our business. Without advertising, marketing, SEO optimization, none of that stuff. Word of mouth. I was telling class earlier, a long time ago I heard a very interesting statistic that you guys ought to know. And that is that 75% of all new car sales come from word of mouth, not from advertising. So I thought, word of mouth, let's try it. So the model for Dean's Beans since the beginning was let Dean's Beans customers find other customers for us, sort of the original crowdsourcing. And that's how we do business. When people tell us they love our coffee, we say, go tell your friends. Or if someone goes into a cafe and sees our coffee, that cafe tells us and we say, hey, tell them, call us, and if they can find another company that wants to buy our coffee, we'll give them a t-shirt. You know, crazy stuff like that. So our marketing is guerrilla marketing, it's grassroots marketing, and it's highly successful. Okay? And we do a lot of colleges, by the way. I'm not here to sell coffee to Notre Dame, but I will tell you we sell a lot of coffee to a lot of different colleges. And starting next year, the decision's not 100% out yet, but starting next year, Sodexo, which services something like 170 universities in the United States, will be using our organic fair trade cocoa for all of that. That's a pretty big business. I don't even know how we're going to do that. You know, I'm going to stay up at night mixing those bags. Any other comments, questions? I know, you can hear the tap. You can hear the tap pouring right now. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey. our fundraising program. Yeah.
And the neat thing about everybody else is that we name it, all that money that we make from profit goes into feeding hungry.
Another way that Dean's Beans works on the local level, thank you very much. We have fundraising programs all over the country. It's about 7% of our business. And our model is we sell the fundraising coffee to churches and other organizations for basically wholesale prices. That way they can sell it for less than retail, right? Which means there's an incentive for the people to participate because they buy it cheaper than they would buy it in a store. And it's fresh, good coffee. And there's like $3, right? You make about $3, more or less? More than that? Whoa, we ought to raise our prices. So they're making $4 a pound. We make 25 cents a pound on this stuff, and they're making $4 a pound. I'm thrilled about that. So that's another way that our coffee is doing good locally, because it's assisting local organizations with their mission. And like I say, 7% of $4 million. You know, it's a substantial amount of revenue churning around, you know, around all over the country. And the second question or comment. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. I forget about that. There's so much going on at Dean's Beans, I forget the details sometimes. Was there a comment up there? Somebody just drying their fingernails in the back row? Okay, no problem. All right, hey, I guess that's it. So thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you.
We thought the nice Mendoza, the Journey Forward leather travel bag might be the present for you rather than the football jersey.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Made in China.
Sorry.
Hey, this is cool. You saw mine with the rip in it, right?
I
Woo!
did.
All right.
I saw that earlier.
That's a perfect.
There are some like